The non-compliance need to be
There we go.
That seems to be working.
Okay, we're there.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Paul. Right, we're live. So we have our planning applications now, and kind of unusually for this committee, we've only got one today. So we'll take that one first. So our first application is going to be presented to us by Emma, our only application, and it's number 7, Collingwood Close, Coniston.
Thank you, Chair. This planning application is for a retrospective rear extension at 7 Collingwood Close in Coniston. The application is before you today because the application is of interest locally. I've just got one update for you, first of all. It has been allowed by the Chair for the objector to show some photographs to aid their speech, notwithstanding the authority's normal policy that public speaking is limited to the right to speak at the meeting. And I'd just like you to note that there is one image that's annotated as approved, which shows the objector's interpretation of how the previously approved extension would have looked from their conservatory. As far as we know, this was never actually like this on site. But if members have any questions about what the photographs show and when they were taken, the objector is here to answer any questions that you might have. The application site is located on Collingwood Close. It's a non-traditional semi-detached dormer bungalow within a modern housing estate to the northern side of Coniston off Udale Road. Planning permission was granted in September 2024 for extensions and alterations to the dwelling. This slide shows one of the approved alterations being the new solid roof over an existing conservatory. The existing conservatory roof was below the eaves of the bungalow prior to this. During construction, alterations were made to the approved conservatory element, including a deeper roof, structural masonry pillars, new windows and doors. A flue, eaves lighting and wall-mounted lights were also incorporated. We advise that the works carried out amounted to a new extension rather than the re-roof of the conservatory, and that's why a new application rather than an amendment to the approved scheme was required to remedy those changes. This is the application before you today. We have received 7 letters of representation, including a petition with 11 signatures, objecting to the impact of lighting on the character and amenity of the area, and 4 letters with concerns about the extension impacting on amenity. In response to the concerns about the lighting, the applicant has removed the eaves lighting from the scheme and intends to remove the lighting from the building. This slide shows the rear extension as it has been constructed. The height of the extension is approximately 40 centimetres higher than the approved roof over the conservatory. The flue sits centrally close to the dormer elevation, and there are 2 wall-mounted lights which sit either side of the windows. This is a photograph of the extension as built from the rear garden of the property. And this is a photograph of the extension as built from Little Moss, the adjacent road. In respect of character and appearance of the area, I consider that whilst above the eaves of the original dwelling, the form of the extension still reflects that of the existing dwelling. And whilst the flue is tall, it sits close to the first floor elevation and is a matte black colour in keeping with the rainwater goods and pipework on those elevations. Overall, I consider the design is in keeping with the modern dwelling and immediately modern surroundings and does not dominate the street scene. This is a photograph of the extension as seen from the rear garden of the adjoining property, 9 Collingwood Close. And this is a photograph showing the extension from inside the conservatory of 9 Collingwood Close next door. Apologies there, you can see that there is a bit of glare from the sunny day. In respect of neighbouring amenity, I appreciate the extension has blocked views of the fells from both the conservatory window and garden of the adjoining dwelling, but having regard to the remaining amount of glazed roof and windows in the conservatory and the open outlook towards the fells from the rest of the garden, I consider that the impacts are not harmful in terms of overbearing or loss of light. This is a photograph which was provided by the objector and shows the impact of the eaves lighting on the extension and dormer on both the character and the amenity of the area at night, and shows why the recommended condition to remove the eaves lighting from the dwelling is necessary. I consider that the wall-mounted downlit lights either side of those windows at their lower level do not result in an acceptable impact. In summary, I'm satisfied that the proposed development is acceptable subject to the conditions as set out in my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Members, any questions for Emma or Andrew? This one. Rick?
The dormer extension's nothing to do with this application. That's previous, is it?
Yeah, that has permission, the dormer window under a previous planning application, yes.
Any of the previous permissions remove permitted development rights in terms of installing lights?
There are no specific conditions that remove that say that no external lighting can be installed on the property.
So the lights on the dormer they could have put up without planning permission?
Yeah, they could do, yeah.
And this new proposed condition requires the removal of the dormer as well as the extension.
Yeah, so the condition would remove the eaves lighting from the extension and the dormer, and it also prohibits further external lighting being installed at the site.
Any questions, members, anymore? Is there like a fallback position, Emma? So say if this was refused and required to be removed, what would the existing fallback position to be? An extension of sorts or just lower?
Yeah, so there is permission for the re-roofing of the conservatory. So the permission as it stands would be that conservatory, but having had a new roof over the top. I think essentially this is a new structure. So the fallback would be to, I guess, put that conservatory back with that re-roof.
Yeah, you've got other planning permissions that have been granted and remain extant. So if you got to a position where you were taking enforcement action, I think the requirements of the notice would likely be you remove the unauthorised development, or in the alternative you make it comply with a planning permission previously granted.
Previous permission. Okay. Jackie?
Just mine's a comment more than anything. It's just why they've done it higher than the next door. Just looks at the aesthetics of the building, just look out of place now.
I mean, the applicant's here, so we could ask that it's maybe to fit the required building control thickness of timbers. I'm not sure. We can ask the applicant. So if there's no more questions, members. Oh, Andy.
So just for clarity then, it's 40 centimetres higher than was proposed. Yes. And the flue is higher because they've agreed to take the lights off. Is that right?
Yeah, they've removed the lighting from the scheme. The flue they've installed that flue without
permission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we've got some public speaking for this. Two sets of public speaking, both called Mr. Jackson. So I'll ask Mr. D. Jackson up first. So Mr. Jackson, I'll just briefly run through how it works. You've got 5 minutes to speak to the committee, and then afterwards, if your 5 minutes runs over, we'll let you know. And if you just stay in chair after in case there's any questions. And when you're ready to start, if you just press go on the microphone button. Yeah. So whenever you're ready.
Hi. I live next door at number 7. This is a retrospective application to legitimise the extension roof, whose height is in breach of planning and materially different from permission. Let me give you a little background first. In May 2024, application 5306 was made for conversion from a 2-bed bungalow to a 4-bed holiday let. The Parish Council objected that this would represent a level of overdevelopment inappropriate for the semi-detached location. The planners agreed and the application was withdrawn. The new application 5416 was submitted for conversion to a 3-bedroom house, retaining a downstairs lounge. Given the reduction of scale from the earlier application, this was approved by planners despite objections from the Parish Council, with conditions that work shall not be carried out otherwise than in conformity with the submitted plans. During construction, however, this condition was overlooked and the downstairs lounge became a 4th bedroom. Hence, the promotional description on the Holiday Cottages website for number 7 clearly states 4 beds, sleeps 8. This, to my mind, was a straightforward intentional breach of planning control. Further, the misleading as-built floor plan drawings in the current application paperwork do not even show this 4th bedroom. So their original objective of having a 4-bed property was achieved. Second breach of control concerns the new conservatory or extension roof, which is between 45 and 50 centimetres higher than it should have been had the drawn and approved plans been followed. I have submitted clear photographic evidence of those numbers. This was reported to the Planning Authority in March of last year, and an enforcement case was opened and remains open. The opinion of the enforcement officer is that the extension is materially different to what was approved. I have two main issues here. Firstly, by their own admission, the applicants were fully aware during construction that the height was in breach of the granted consent. The reason for this, meeting building regulations and insulation requirements, cannot possibly justify such a wide discrepancy. Ceiling insulation blocks are typically 10 to 15 centimetres thick, not 45. And wouldn't a professional architect have ensured that his designs were in accordance with such regulations? There's ample information on the planning website relating to established protocols for addressing the issue of material divergence from approved plans arising during construction. Have the applicants sought proper professional advice, they should at least have communicated with the planning officer, or maybe consideration should have been given to a section 73 variation of consent, instead of which they just ploughed on regardless. So, as with bedroom 4, it's difficult to avoid the conclusion that this constitutes deliberate and intentional unauthorised development and disregard for the principles of planning control. Changing the name from sunroom to conservatory to extension doesn't alter that fact or its impact. No inspections appear to have been carried out. The second issue I have with this roof concerns the interpretation and application of Policy 06. States, development must not have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of adjoining residents due to overshadowing, overbearing effect or other adverse impacts. The design and access statement claims there is no loss of amenity to others as a result of the as-built construction. I'm sorry, this is just not the case. The planners report rather calmly states the rear extension has blocked out a view of the fells from this conservatory roof. It also states the courts have found that a right to a particular private view is unlikely to be a material planning consideration. Unlikely is quite an important word here. The officer's somewhat bland description of a view of the fells fails to do justice to this spectacular and iconic view of Coniston, Oldman and Broomfell that we have enjoyed from our conservatory for 60 years. Its loss has caused us a lot of distress every single day and every time we look up. A view is by definition an amenity. It's an amenity that brings pleasure and enjoyment. There is little to beat the sight of the sun setting over the Oman. It's also an amenity that adds value to a property. We have lost this amenity because of this thoughtless, inconsiderate and illegal construction. The ultimate irony here is that the picture window installed on the west-facing side of number 7's dormer enjoys exactly that view. The photographs I have supplied demonstrate this point. They show the overbearing effect of the black extension roof wall that should not be there and the view that used to be there. All these photos were taken either from my conservatory or from my patio. Can you select those? That's what we do, right? That's what we look at. That's where it should be. That's the height it should be at. Go back again. That's what it should like. It should look like. That's had consent been followed. That's what it would look like from inside the house had consent been followed. That's what it looks like as built. And finally, that's what it looks like. So we look at every day. Instead of seeing the old man, we see that. I'm sorry. This application fails on two counts. Failure to justify the height variation from the drawn to the as-built and failure to observe the protection objectives of Policy 06. In conclusion, I am advised by someone who's way above my pay grade that rigorous enforcement is important as a matter of principle and to reduce future breaches of planning control. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Members, any questions for Mr. Jackson? No, Emma, you can just flick from that one to 2 slides back. So it's as per consent, and then 2 more. Sorry, it's the 2 I'm trying to compare is the one inside. Yeah, that's it. That one, and that one, and that one. Okay. Thank you. So if there's no questions for Mr. Jackson, thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. If I could ask you to return to your seat.
Okay, no question?
No, thank you. So Mr. M. Jackson, you are the applicant's representative. So again, 5 minutes to speak. Whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer. If you go over the 5 minutes, we will let you know. And if you just hang on after in case there's any questions from the members.
Thank you. Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in relation to the retrospective planning application at 7 Collingwood Close. The subject property is a 1977 semi-detached bungalow set within an established residential area of Coniston, characterised by modest domestic scale properties and relatively consistent forms and materials. Other properties have smaller but similar extensions, alterations are present within the street scene and wider area. Approval has previously been given for the extensions and alterations, and an application for the raised patio has also been approved by members of this planning committee. The use of the building has not changed since the submission of the planning application, and the internal space is used in the same way as prior to the works. During construction, the originally approved scheme, alterations were made to the height of the flat roof to improve thermal properties and improve upon building regulation standards. Similarly, due to building regulations and the amount of glazing that was present, masonry pillars were required. Again, changing the structure slightly, but also the standard of the roof. The changes were innocently made by the applicant to comply with building regulations, and it was considered by the applicant that the changes would still amount to permitted development. An enforcement inquiry resulted in the head of enforcement visiting the site whilst the builders were there, and suggestions were made that it too was permitted development, including the chimney that's set in the original roof of the building. No further correspondence was made for quite a few months. However, when notified by the authority that permission was required, the application was made setting out the changes to the originally approved scheme. It was requested that the lights were still to be considered and regularised also. However, since the objections and the request from the authority, the lighting has been removed from the proposal. Following receipt of the letter from the enforcement team, the applicant instructed an electrician to disconnect the lighting, not just removing a fuse that covers the entire lighting circuit, but removing the wires altogether from the eaves lighting. So although the lights themselves are still present and will be removed, they aren't actually functional and they do not work. An application was prepared on the basis to regularise the material changes to the extension, including the small increase in height in the masonry pillars. The height of the approved roof always sat marginally above the original common shared parapet wall, which isn't necessarily shown on the images that have just been shown to you as before approved and as built. The design and access statement took the measurement from the original flat roof to the increased height of the main flat roof, which sits at 36 centimetres. However, as shown on one of the objection photos, including the drainage lip on the common shared boundary, it does amount to 42.5 centimetres. The changes are small, and aesthetically such changes to the elevations would on their own be acceptable in terms of permitted development rights. However, the height does mean that it needs formal planning consent, but it's not felt that the visual changes are significantly detrimental to the aesthetics of the original property or the character of the wider area or the National Park / World Heritage Site. Given the orientation of the building and the very small increase in height of the roof, it isn't considered that as-built extension has a significant and detrimental impact upon the amenities and living conditions of neighbouring properties. It's not saying that there isn't an impact. We just consider, like the case officer, that this isn't significant to warrant a refusal of consent on its own. The officer's report is considered to sufficiently cover all relevant material planning considerations and correctly balances and concludes that the proposal is acceptable with the removal of the lights to not have a significant and detrimental impact on the amenities of the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Members, any questions? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. If I could ask you to just switch the microphone off and you can go back to your seat. Thank you. So, members, on to our discussion part now. Oh, Phil.
Sorry, Mike. I have a question, really. It's always difficult, these questions, when people are obviously upset by the whole thing. With the glass roof of number 9, Collingwood, whatever, from there you had this fantastic view looking up through the glass roof up to the Old Man and Brimfell. Had that been a solid roof, you wouldn't be able to see anything, would you? And have I got that right? It's the view that he's absolutely ruined with the height of the extension, that that number 9 cannot look out through their roof to the view of the fells.
Yeah.
Yeah, so view through the glass roof on the conservatory. Yes.
A roof, a see-through roof's as valid as windows.
Yeah, I think any glazing into a room, if you're you would assess the impact on the light and the going into that property. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the effect. Really, here we've got the effect on the amenity of neighbouring properties. So loss of light and being overimposed on, I suppose. When we've all done our training when we got into the planning committee, and we know material considerations that we can consider, and they always say the right to a private view isn't a material consideration, and how a development may affect the value of property again is something that we can't and shouldn't consider when we weigh up our decisions. So private views and values and properties that just unfortunately aren't, even though it's very emotive subject to a lot of people when developments happen. So what you're looking at is the harm here caused from lack of light coming in, is it significant enough to refuse the application? That's one of the considerations. Andy?
Have we got a picture of the view before and a picture from the same place of the view after? I think we had, haven't we?
We've got a couple of pictures from inside.
In the number 9's pack or in.
I don't think we have a photograph of the view of the fells through the window.
Yeah, from inside I was meaning. There was a picture from inside that showed a bit further backwards than that one, the windows to the one that had the glare on there.
Oh, that shows the as-built. That's the as-built, but because of the glare, you can just make out the line of the extension there. So that's as-built, so you wouldn't be able to see. You can.
We haven't got one before it though, have we? No. But would you have seen Continental Man before that?
Yeah, and I visited the site on the previous application, and you could see it. You could see the mountains from the roof prior to the extension being built.
Again, we're talking private view, so in our considerations, it's a difficult one.
It would have been useful if we've had the same photograph before and after.
Yeah, and identical before and after, same position. Jenny?
We see the picture where it's from inside and is as built now. I just wanted to know about the closeness of the roof to the objector's bedroom window, because that looks like it's right up against it, doesn't it, and halfway up it. No.
Is that okay, Jenny?
Looking up, you can see spectacular view.
Okay. Members, anyone else want to chip in? This is our discussion part. We'll be looking for comments, possible proposals, one way or the other. Mr. Jackson. Okay. Emma, do we have do we have the plans at the start of your presentation pack or some drawings? Okay. Okay, so we have the plans here. This is what was approved on the previous permission, and we have the actual pictures of what is there in real life. Okay, members, any?
So was it always going to be higher than the neighbouring property?
No, so this is what has been approved. So if you can see there, it's the one on the left. It's at that height, and if we flick forward to the picture of what actually is there, it's that. So basically, it's that additional 40 centimeters on top has been created, plus the flue pipe. So in your considerations, is that significant enough harm to be something you'd want to refuse planning permission for? Doug.
I think as we categorically have ascertained that the right to a private view is not something that we can look at in these discussions or even think about in these discussions. However, it comes down, as so many of these applications do, to the opinion of each individual committee member as to whether that, in this case, that increase over the agreed original permission is sufficient to be detrimental enough to not agree to it. And and looking at that, it is a significant increase. Regardless of the view, is a significant increase which would detrimentally affect the right to quiet enjoyment, the right to enjoyment of the neighbouring property. But as I said, it comes down to a personal view. And I think hearing members' personal views on whether that is sufficiently detrimental is where we will be going in our decision as a committee.
Doug? Rick?
I'm quite interested. No one has actually mentioned the design and appearance of it. I mean, it doesn't look that good. And the bit that's been added is a big black fascia. And there is a question as to whether, in terms of design and appearance, that is acceptable or not. And if it was going to be kept like that, the big black mass adds to the problem. And if it was reduced to the permitted height, it would remove that issue. And in terms of design and appearance, there's not a lot, we're not actually thinking about that. And I think that is an issue that you should be also looking at. And it makes it more difficult when it's built to say, no, I don't like it, take it down, because it has all sorts of implications. But it's an issue to consider.
Phil?
I think well considered comment. I think were this application not having been done come to us now, we say no, we think you should lower the roof. And it's only the fact that it's already up, apparently through an ingenuous mistake or whatever. If that application came to us now, I would say it's my opinion that it's too high and it should be lower. And it's only the reason that it's already stuck up that I'm dithering a bit. And I find that upsetting, because I get the impression that this was a non-ingenuous mistake, which I'd just like to add that I would definitely have said we're against that type of extension.
Okay, Andy.
So I'm assuming it's thicker because of building regs and insulation, because it's a solid roof and not a glass roof. If it had been a glass roof, it would have been lower, but they wanted a solid roof. So because of building regs, they would either have to have a step down out of the property into there to get the insulation, or a lower ceiling inside. I'm assuming.
I suspect this extension continues through the house. There's no doors between it
That's
and
what I
the
mean, so
house.
it'll be flat through.
Yeah,
So to
it
put
needs
that lower, you
the
might
insulation
they
to
might not got
comply.
building regs passed because they wouldn't have had the headroom.
Yeah.
So is that, and the black is the standard black fascia, I assume, or timber fascia, plastic fascia or wood, whatever it is. So that we might have a say on what the material was. I don't. Is it plastic or is it wood?
Like some sort of aluminium facing.
On the top of
it's kind of
like lead, but I don't know what that top is. It looks, can't tell from here whether it's plastic or wood. You know, we would have had comment on what material possibly.
Yeah, I mean it's a domestic extension, but Jenny.
Yeah, so the building regs that the applicant's representative was talking about, does that come into it in any material considerations, or
Yeah.
and also Andy was talking about steps down, and there is extra steps if you look at the before and after that way, then it's showing that there are extra steps on the, can you see that? There are extra steps anyway.
Oh, what you mean to get into it?
Internally. Us, would it?
I mean, the building regs isn't for us as a planning committee to think too much about, because they'll get, if somebody gets permission, then it's up to them to then go to building regs to make the building regs fit the permission. What I suspect is that if you build a conservatory, it's separated from the main house. So when it comes to building regs, that's fine. But if you have a walk-through type extension, it needs to be really well insulated to comply with building regs, because there's no separating doors between the conservatory or the extension and the house. So they've had to insulate the roof really well, kind of thing, so they wouldn't get away with a glass roof unless they separated like patio doors internally. Okay, members. So, Chris.
If you're moving it on, I was about to say that I think it's regrettable that they've lost some of that view, but as it says in 511, they'll lost the right of a particular private views and right of material planning consideration, and we're a planning committee. Unfortunate, I think, but I think we have no other option to accept the officer's recommendations, and I move it.
Okay, we'll take that as a proposal. Thank you, Chris. Andy, seconded. Anyone else want to make any other comments?
I just want to comment on light. I feel like that's a very important part in living in a house. I've lived in a dark house before now and find them very depressing. So I feel like that's an impact on people's welfare. And,
right. Okay.
Just like to say that.
Okay, so members, we've got a proposal, we've got a second, that we grant permission as per officer's report. So how this will work, we'll take the vote. Should the vote fail, then it's a tacit refusal. Okay, that's how it works. Should it, yeah, okay, we'll go with that. So all those in favour to grant permission as per officer's report? 4. All those against? Okay, and then it's chair's rollover, so it's granted, only just. Okay, that's it then, members. Thank you very much. It's that's for granting permission. Yes. That's a stalemate, and when the stalemate happens, the chair's one rolls the decision over. That's it, yes. That's it. That's how standing orders of this committee, how it works. And I know it's not what you wanted. Yes, that's how the committee works. Okay. Okay, members, moving on to the rest of our agenda. We've got site inspections. Does anyone want to propose a site inspection for anything coming up? Andrew, any site inspections?
No, nothing additional. Just a reminder that immediately after this meeting, we're going to go to the Belsfield in Bowness for
We'll talk about that when we switch off there.
Pre-application site visit there that was agreed at last committee.
Okay. And then we've got delegated planning applications. Anything on that? Delegated compliance matters. Appeals lodged. Appeals decided. We've just got that one that I noted there. The stables was an interesting one about a policy we don't normally talk about. Policy 25 about domestic horse stuff, equestrian use. And then we've got that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. We could turn off the live stream.